As I've mentioned, Saturday's game between Ohio State and Oklahoma is one that has been circled on the calendar for a long time. Coverage on Fox begins at 7 p.m. Eastern. And this game is one of two between college football's most historic programs. Both teams have combined for 12 AP national titles, 79 conference titles. Each team with over 860 total wins. That's absurd. Ohio State has produced 7 Heisman Trophy winners to Oklahoma's 5, and both teams have won over 20 bowl games. Urban Meyer and Bob Stoops know what's at stake with this primetime matchup.
The best thing about 2-0, chance to go 3-0. It's going to be real difficult. Obviously, a very good team.
Big week with Ohio State here coming to town. Excellent football team.
There's no way to simulate going on the road in the offseason. I would have done it.
You definitely have to concentrate on what really matters, and that's the work you do on the field and the film room, and ignore the rest of it.
That's one of those sick feelings on the sidelines. And use language I can't use right here, like son of a.
Everybody likes to see these kind of matchups, even that aren't Oklahoma and Ohio State fans.
The size of the defensive line, you're not going to run. You have to be really, really on your target to run the football on them. They're big, gigantic guys inside, a very similar Alabama defensive line.
Starts with their quarterback, the balance, being able to run and throw, their quickness on the outside. Defensively, same thing, strength up front, quick in the secondary. That enough for you?
Well, we have to be balanced. You have no chance in this game to think you're going to go just pound the ball. That's what 50-year-old men do all day. They sit and come in early and drink a lot of coffee and stare at grease boards.
All right, welcome back in. Joel Klatt along with Bruce Feldman and Matt Leinart, our resident Heisman Trophy winner. Good to have you guys. How you doing?
Good.
I like it when you guys join me because then I don't have to rant and rave about something, get all upset about something. All right, so Ohio State, Oklahoma. Matt, you're going to be there. We're going to bring the studio show down there live. Bruce, you'll be handling studio here from Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
I love it.
One step blows up the
set.
Bruce is doing pregame, impact players.
I love it.
I'm taking over. They're not even going to need you guys.
That's what I like. That's what I like to hear. Before we get into this game, I do want you to know that all the comments and questions that you can possibly throw at us, we're going to try to get to all of them during the course of the show. So we want this to be as interactive as it possibly can be here on Facebook Live as we go throughout the season, and in particular tonight. First, before we get into the game, a couple of comments on my rant. Marvin says, in 10 years, football will be two-hand touch at this rate. Marvin, you might be right. I mean, listen.
Football, as we know, might be gone, man. I'm telling you, the way it's going.
Football's under attack. What have you heard anything on the rules front?
No, I think what's unique about this one is it wasn't like a judgment call where it was like, all right, was it possession, was it not? These are guys who should know better and just didn't know the rule. That's the part that to me is kind of mind-boggling. It's not one guy, it was like a dozen guys.
Again, I think a national officiating body would help a lot. Continuity, training would be better. But let's get into the game. Okay, Ohio State, number 3 in the country. Oklahoma with that early loss to Houston, and then they face off now in Oklahoma. I will say just real quick, this is the highest ranked team to visit Norman since 2008. Remember when Texas Tech was undefeated? Late in the season, they had beat Texas. They came in with Michael Crabtree and got smoked.
I was at that game.
65-21, something along those lines.
Pretty close to that, yeah. It wasn't even that close.
Sam Bradford and company would go on to win the Big 12 title. They won the tiebreaker. But this is the highest ranked team to visit Norman since then. By the way, Urban Meyer is 18-0 on the road at Ohio State. Every game he's ever played in a true road environment, he's won. I want to start there because that is insane. That blows my mind that he's had that level of consistency on the road. And I know that there's been some weaker opponents in that 18, but 18 guys.
I think 7 of those in the last 2 years, if you consider like neutral site games or playoff games, were against ranked teams. I mean, you could throw Alabama in there.
Well, these are only true road games.
Well, the stat I had seen was in the last 2 years, he is 7-0 against teams away from Columbus. So that includes, crushing Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. That includes, because the loss in there was against an unranked Virginia Tech team, and I forgot, and Michigan State was at home.
And I think a key for this game too is the youth and the inexperience from Ohio State. Everyone's talking about they look good 2-0, but they haven't been on the road. They haven't been tested like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how those young guys fare in a hostile environment. That's one of the keys to the game for me, is how this young defense fares against that Oklahoma offense.
Well, in particular, when you've got veteran quarterbacks.
Right.
Both of these guys have been in the thick of Heisman Trophy races. Remember, before J.T. Barrett went down 2 years ago, he was right there.
He came in 5th, right?
Yeah, I think he came in 5th. Last year, Mayfield was 4th, I believe. Tyler Tabor asks us on Facebook, who's better, Baker or J.T.? Listen, that's going to be a common question. Very different styles of game. Matt, I'll go to you first.
That's a hard one to answer. I like them both. I think they're very unique. I love J.T. Barrett's leadership qualities. He's calm. He's poised. I love his ability, just to make plays in situations, in difficult situations. And Baker Mayfield, J.T. Barrett is more cerebral to me in a way where I just think, J.T. Barrett. And Baker Mayfield is more Johnny Manziel-esque.
Yeah.
He's more Brett Favre-esque. He's more.
It's almost like he wants to be outside of the structure of the offense.
Yeah, he just.
Like he thrives on.
I think that's what he thrives on. He thrives on just improvising, running around, and making.
There's a
play.
gunslinger quality to him that is very. I mean, he's the guy. Now, both these guys have chips on their shoulder. I mean, J.T. Barrett is a Texas kid who wanted to go to Texas. They didn't want him, and Baker had hardly anybody offered him.
But that's what makes him special. This kid was a walk-on, and we know how walk-ons are on football teams, Joel. But no, we know how they're treated. We know the opportunity to play.
I know exactly how they're treated.
But the opportunity
you
to
where
play,
this angst comes from.
Where all the anger
guys like
comes from
you
that.
treated him
But
when he got to see you.
That's what makes, to me. Again, I can't even answer who's better because they're both very good for their teams and what they are asked to do. But the fact that Baker Mayfield was a walk-on, got overlooked, got passed on by almost everybody, for him to be the player that he is and to be a Heisman candidate and to lead his team to the playoff last year, it's incredible. I've been on so many teams and I've seen so many players. It's incredible what he's done.
Who plays better Saturday?
I think Baker does. I think Baker has actually a better surrounding cast. I mean, he has more proven commodities than
Really?
I mean, you look at the two running backs behind him. They played in a bunch of big games. We're still finding out about Curtis Samuel's dynamic, and obviously Mike Weber like.
So if you're not familiar, Mike Weber is the new running back at Ohio State. Curtis Samuel is a guy that's leading them in receiving, and he's their second leading rusher. He's kind of in that H-back kind of a hybrid mode. I think that Ohio State has better pass catchers, which in a game like this, Matt, you and I both know when you get into those games and when you're really evenly matched, what ends up being the biggest down? Third down.
Right.
And what do you need on third down? Receivers.
Yeah.
You got to have guys that can win in space. You got to have guys that can create their own space. And in the Houston game, I just felt like Oklahoma didn't have those guys. Like they were missing Sterling Shepard. Like it was glaring that Shepard wasn't on the field.
Yeah, Mark Andrews is a guy who's scoring a lot of touchdowns.
Special talent. It's just the consistency.
And then D.D. Westbrook is more of a possession receiver. They don't have, in my opinion, that number one guy where Baker Mayfield can just lean on. When you have a guy and you have Sterling Shepard on the outside, I'm going to run around. I know you have that chemistry and you build it. I haven't seen that. And I think this is a tougher challenge for Baker Mayfield in a sense where, although Ohio State's defense really hasn't been tested, they are ball hawks.
Yep.
They lead the country in interceptions, turnover margin. They're fast, they're athletic, they're well coached, and I just think because of that Houston tape and because of what Oklahoma put out there against Houston's offense and those receivers, J.T. Barrett's going to be loving this film. Be like, man, these guys are going to be running wild. So I think Baker Mayfield has a stiffer challenge, even being at home in this football game.
Brent Mills says Buckeyes are going to get brutalized, are going to brutalize the Sooners, I should say. OU is continually overrated, and it'll show on Saturday. I don't know if Oklahoma is overrated. I think that they've had to adjust over the course of the last couple of years. To me, it's their running game. If they lean on their running game, I genuinely believe if Lincoln Riley just runs the football, they can beat almost anybody in the country. But he cannot help himself at times, and he leans on throwing the football because it's too enticing. That's how he cut his teeth. Remember, he was a assistant, Bruce, I think, for 7 years at Texas Tech under Mike
even
Leach.
more than that because he was a student assistant, and so that part of that, I think that's definitely an issue. I think where that helps him is the defense is so shaky when you see it, I'm talking to people who are close to Oklahoma. That's their concern, is they wonder, what does Mike Stoops have as answers, especially when it comes to mobile quarterbacks, and that's what JT is.
He's got the home field. I mean, he's going to have the crowd.
That'll help a lot.
Joel, to your point, and we actually talked earlier about this, in those 3 losses, Oklahoma averages 2.1 yards per carry. In the 12 wins since the start of 2015, they average 253 yards per game on the ground, 5.5 yards per carry.
And
that's their formula. That's what they do.
They run it more than they throw it in their wins, and they don't do that in their losses. Again, I think I gave you the numbers against Houston. They essentially called about 15 to 16 running plays.
Because you're factoring in the Mayfield scrambles out of it.
Right.
The part that I was at the Orange Bowl last year, and the part that kind of surprised me, but when you talk to, there were NFL personnel people there, and they said, when you look at them, Clemson's guys physically on the trenches looked a lot better than Oklahoma's. And when you see a team that has similar caliber athletes or better caliber athletes on the line, Oklahoma does not respond well. Clemson kind of kicked their butts.
Sure.
And Ohio State has, they're younger guys, but they have guys who could do that. And this is a young Oklahoma offensive line. They were embarrassed by Houston and Ed Oliver and some of those guys, a non-Power 5 conference school. I want to see how they respond against Ohio State.
Ohio State has not given up an offensive touchdown. Their defense has not. The only touchdown that was scored against them was actually a pick 6 in the first 2 series of the entire season.
Well, I think it was his first pass.
It might have been his first pass. And by the way, that defense has scored 3 touchdowns themselves. So it's going to be an amazing matchup. Do you guys have a prediction yet, or are you saving that for later in the week?
We were just talking about it. I don't have a prediction yet. I'm going to keep digging and see what I think. See what my gut tells me on Friday.
Do you have one, Bruce?
I'm tempted to go with Oklahoma because I think they were embarrassed, by Houston. And I think, just some of the stuff you just said about got to run the football, got to be more physical. To me, that's where it's going to come down to. If Oklahoma's offensive line can show up and really respond to being challenged, that I think they will.
Here's a quick thought about this week, if you will. We've got 3 programs that could be 1 and 2 at the end of the week. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, USC. We're going to get to those other 2 games in a moment, but that's pretty wild when you think about what we thought about these teams coming in. I know I wasn't as high on USC. Brought to you by Dr. Pepper. It's a college football tradition.